Welcome to Scalable Insights with Larry Dillon. Here he is back again, all the way from Cambridge, England, the legend, David Parry. How are you, David?
Hey, Larry. Great to be back. Good to see you again. Yeah, we were, we've been on each other for, 25 years at least. It must
25
be.
years, yeah.
Easily.
Yeah. So, Dave, why don't you... David's a business consultant, and in the last 21 years, he's coached about 14 or 15 companies and consulted with them and taken them double, triple, quadrupled the size of the company without fail. And it's always great to talk to you, to talk about these unbelievable success stories and how you do it. And it's basically through consultation. They hire you as a consultant for a year or two, and you're just consistently able to turn these companies around, which is mind blowing.
Well, let's be clear, Larry.
Harriet, you can call me Harriet.
Larry,
Now all of a sudden I'm Harriet.
I am no Superman. It's the companies that achieve that growth. I just kind of tell them where maybe it's going wrong, or where maybe it's going to go right, and then help and guide them on that pathway. And like I said, I just got lucky at the time I joined them. They were on a trajectory of growth. I just happened to be there at that moment. So
lucky 14 times in a row.
Yeah.
So what? So talk to us a little bit about your experience, like, before we get into this, because you are one of the rock stars, and I should mention we used to work together. You worked on technology marketing reports with us, which was a phenomenal ride, and that was just such a good time. Such a good time.
Yeah.
0 to like 200 employees in 18 months, and around U.S., Canada, England, and that was fun. But so tell us about, like, you've got this unbelievable track record. Tell us about your past experience that you draw on. Just give us a quick overview of what do you think, helped you to get to this point where you can go in, analyze, figure out what the problem is, and then execute on the plan.
So I think, Larry, I've been I think genuinely I've been really fortunate to been in the right place at the right time with different companies as they've been, where they're at, and I've been able to join them. The experience that I've had, before you and I met. I mean, I started off life as a university student, and then I became a school teacher, and then I wanted to be a wannabe rock star in a rock band, and well, maybe that was with the long hair and all that stuff. But that was a moment in time, and then I became MD of a small manufacturing company.
MD for the U.S. folks is managing director, which would be equivalent to like CEO or president.
CEO of a relatively small sub $1 million business at that time, which was a lot of money, I guess, in those days. But and that's a story for another time. But we managed to transform the performance of that business on a bet. Then I joined a much larger company, still UK based, but maybe with 10,000 employees in manufacturing, and that also became a turnaround story. It wasn't just me; there were 8 people. So I was young; I was in my 30s, but learning about transforming businesses.
And that was that the office furniture company?
Yeah, partly office furniture, but that was a. It was a business it was a company called Rempli. They were founded by the government at the end of the Second World War to provide employment and training for disabled ex-servicemen. That was its foundation. Okay. It's a really interesting story for another time. But in that's kind of where I learned about lean manufacturing. Because in the nature of that, but it wasn't just furniture. We had engineering business, we had technology business. There were maybe 100 factories. So we had 100 different businesses in operating businesses, and but I learned about structure, process, lean manufacturing, and so on. And I learned by then I was already in the sales world as well as sales and marketing. And then in the early 90s, I joined this conglomerate. I joined a conglomerate who they were bigger. They were now international in the sense that they were pan-European or European business, not just a UK business. And they bought and sold companies, and they buy businesses. Reasonable sized businesses, I guess 10, 15, $20 million business and more. They would take cost out very quickly, and my job was to make it grow very quickly. Mm-hmm. And so we'd drive up profit, which you can do like that. You take out cost, drive up profit, drive up sales, and then they sell it. And so it was a formula. You know, I remember my boss at the time. He had a little piece of paper, and he had some financial ratios on the piece of paper. And no matter what the business was, we would overlay these financial ratios on the company, and then we cut and drive it forward. And it was exciting for me in the beginning. You know, to be part of this mergers and acquisitions team. I learned a lot. But then the end for me, it was a bit repetitive. You know, in that we were. Really, all we were doing was firing lots of people and taking cost out and driving profits up, and it just wasn't rewarding. I mean, I was there 8 years, mm-hmm. And then I started going on my own. And I think around that time, that's kind of when you and I met, when at the back end of that period, and then from there on in, over the past 20 odd years, having created my own consultancy. I mean, I told you the story, but when I came to meet you guys, I mean, you were transformational for me. Because I'd gone from my ivory tower in this sort of corporate world of buying and selling businesses. And, you know, I flew out here to meet you guys, and we partied on the weekend. And then, you know, at 5 o'clock on a Monday morning, I remember it, we were in your offices picking up the phone and hustling business. And then, you know, with Bill Dillon and you, and going out to the streets of New York and doing flybys in New York before 9/11, but doing flybys in New York, looking at the, you know, these skyscraper buildings and looking on the billboards and see who's a likely target for us. That was complete alien for me. You know, I'd never experienced anything like that in my sales world, and so it was. But what it did, it brought me back down to reality. It brought me back down to the tangible, the hardwood. What do people actually do to sell? And of course, then the whole TMR thing was immensely successful. Yeah. And then I had a string of other successes with businesses where I was just introduced to one, to the other, and so on, just through referral. And you know, in the beginning, it was you kind of look at if you get high growth in a business and fairly quickly, and you think, well, maybe that was a fluke. You know, maybe it was just, okay, yeah, we worked hard and we got it, but, you know. And then you do it the second time and think, well, maybe there's something in this. You know, it's still, but, you know, sales guys get lucky. I mean, I don't class myself as a sales guy anymore, but but as time moved on, you realize that it's not a fluke at all. It is actually a repeatable process that you can do to get companies to grow. And that's kind of what I do now. That's what I do today. And it's, you know, it's great fun to see companies change the kind of thing that you know, all businesses. I mean, don't let me oversimplify it, because businesses aren't simple, but all businesses, there are key things that drive the performance of a business from front to end. You know, we talked about the car manufacturer. There is a production line from the supply chain of creating the steel in the first place all the way through to the end when there's a customer on the end of that vehicle. And businesses like that, you can define what those stages are in all businesses. And if you understand that, and then you can start to see, you know, what's that one or two or three key blockers to growth in that business. And it might be people, it might be knowledge, it might be skill, it might be the processes, it might be the channel, you know, the channels that they're selling through. It could be the just their message, their marketing message. It could be their pricing. It could be all sorts of things. I remember one company where that I went into, and they had absolutely superb product, really high-end product, but their pricing was underneath everybody in the marketplace. And I went and said, "Well, why are you doing that?" He said, "It's crazy. You've got a better product than anybody else, but you're undercutting every." Oh, well, you know, we're we've always done it that way, and so I increased the pricing of this product at great risk, but to them also they thought by 25%. And everybody thought I was absolutely crazy. They said, no, you got, and the arguments I had inside the company from the management, from the sales guys, no way did they want to do this. And in the end, I said, no, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Just trust me. And we did. No customer was ever lost. No customer ever complained. And they grew, of course, they grew the profitability immensely.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the advantage of getting a coach in or a consultant in, because you can't see yourself. Michael Jordan had a coach, Tiger Woods. The greatest athletes all have coaches that aren't as good at the game as they are.
Exactly.
It's so important, and especially as I get older, and I've seen it all. I've been doing this for 30 years, working with companies, and I've seen companies take off with just a little bit of coaching on our part. Just, hey, you need to tighten this up or tighten that up, and absolutely skyrocket. Yeah. And then literally to the point where, in a very short period of time, I can figure out what some of those blockages are, some of the things that are holding them back, just by what management is saying about their team. Like sometimes you'll get a CEO, we don't believe in sales.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's a problem right there.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't heard that many times. Or what I've seen in the smaller end of the business I've worked in is the managing director thinks being the sales manager or the sales director or being the sales is really easy. You don't need a salesman. Well, you need a salesman. I can do that.
Right.
And then, of course, they do it. They try to do the job, and they realize how complex it is. Let's just step back a second to what you said about coaching, because let's just deconstruct that simple phrase that you're a consultant or you're a coach.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
If we can. So the first thing is that the word. I mean, I don't like being called a consultant. I mean, I am.
Sorry.
That's what I do. But I don't like it, because the interpretation of a consultant is that I'll come along and I'll tell you what you already knew. Yeah, I'll hold a mirror up to your business.
Right.
And in truth, that's exactly what I do. I will hold a mirror up to your business, but obviously in a very structured way, in a way that will highlight things for you that maybe you didn't see in the mirror before. Maybe the light wasn't actually shining on the right side of your face, But,
right.
And so let's understand what the consultancy part, if it's done properly, if you've got the right people, what they're doing is helping you understand your business better. They're not simply holding a mirror up to you. So that's the consultancy bit. And more, of course, and that's why you've got the big four consultancies earning ridiculous sums of money, because they are actually helping the organizations grow and change in what they do. And then if we turn to the coaching part, and this for me is a passion. So I've seen in the world of sales. So I've met sales trainers. I am not a sales trainer. I don't do that. I can train salespeople, and I have trained salespeople, and I've had salesmen around the table doing cold calling and all that sort of stuff in my past. But the teacher, in my joke, I joke with you, didn't I, that I started off life as a school teacher, and I still am a school teacher.
Right.
Sorry, I started off life as a teacher. I still am a teacher. They're just bigger children. Now in businesses,
right.
yeah.
Right.
But the logic is that if I'm coming along and I'm simply going to teach you, let me teach you a methodology, Larry, and you sit there and listen to me, and I'll pull up some PowerPoints and talk about this methodology and that methodology, and sure, I can do that, and you'll all sit there. It's very exciting, and I'll give you a little exercise in the workshops, and you'll all go, "Oh, wasn't that great?" And here's my folder, or my virtual folder of all the stuff I've learned. If I ask you a week later what you've learned, you'll have forgotten half of it, at least.
Right.
At least, maybe even the next day. And so there's an element of good teachers don't do that. Good teachers involve the kids. So there's a saying. I got my fridge. I do it with my kids. My fridge at home. Tell me and I'll forget. Show me and I may remember. Involve me and I may understand. That's my mantra in the way that I change or help companies change, because you have to involve the people in the process of change. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. They'll forget, or it'll move on. You're a one-night wonder that you've gone in and told them what they need to do, and then you've gone and you moved on, and nothing happens. So and thereby for me that's then leads you into the world of coaching. So what the coaches do, what the really good coaches do, is they show me and I'll understand. So they're helping people understand how to bring about change. So if I'm going to teach somebody how to do a better demo, I'm not going to do the demo for them and just say, hey, look at me, look how wonderful I am. Here's the way I do it. But I'll help them do it, and then together, it's like you said about the leading sports people with their coaches. Yeah. Together, we look at how did you perform. So let's look at it again and say, how could we just tweak that bit of performance? If I want somebody to perform better at conversion, and the middle bit of your formula, the conversion ratio bit. Right. But if I want somebody to perform better at discovery stage, I would go through my first qualification bit and then get into the deep dive discovery. If I tell them these are the questions you need to ask, and by the way, you need to ask these questions in these ways, and I go, and they'll listen wisely, and then they'll forget.
Right.
So what they have to do is engage them in the process. Engage them. Okay, you're going to do it. We'll record it. And then we'll deconstruct it together. We'll have some meetings with customers, and don't worry, but we'll record it, and then we'll look back and we'll explain to the customer what we're doing, and that way you're helping somebody improve their game, and it might be 1% today, or 1% tomorrow, 1% a week later. Those incremental changes will bring about performance improvement. That's the difference for me in what a coach is doing. And you're right. I mean, I go into companies, and they all think I'm some kind of rockstar super salesman. And the first thing I say, before you say anything, I am not your rockstar super salesman. Don't even think for 1 minute that I am. But I'll tell you what, I've managed, coached, and helped and developed some of the world's best rockstar salespeople. So I know what it takes to get there, but it isn't me. And if it were me and I was the only rockstar salesperson you had, you'll be limited by my ability.
And as soon as you go, they're gone. It's gone.
Exactly. But if I can help you, or if I can help your sales manager, your sales leader, employ 10 aspiring or budding rockstar salespeople, and we turn those guys into rockstar, then I got 10 times the performance out of a group of people.
Right.
Yeah.
And so today in this series, we have this special series with David, where we're going to go through a number of your success stories. This is the third in the series. I think we're going to wind up with about 12, so it'll be one a month. And the first one that we talked about was a technology company that you took from 10 million to 45 million. That took a year. And then the last one that we spoke about was 60 million to 120 million. And
2 years.
Oh, that took 2 years. Yeah. Sorry. That took 2 years. Shame on you. Slacker. And then the one we're going to talk about today, you took from 30 million and talk to us about, because I think it's important for people to understand the scale.
Yeah.
And also when you hear this, it's, I was talking to David earlier today that this applies to any company, even a company that's successful. I said, do you have any doubt in your mind that if you were dropped into any successful company that you couldn't find some of the bottlenecks and release those?
No doubt.
And get significant increase.
No doubt.
So tell us about the success of the company that we're going to talk about
today. To answer your question, there is no doubt, because every business has similar challenges, of course. They will vary in the amount and intensity depending on the company and what they're selling and what their organization structure is and where in the world they're trying to sell and so on. So there's obviously many variables, but there's underneath, a car has 4 wheels. My car has 4 wheels. Your car has 4 wheels, but your car is a little different from mine. And so the although we've still got 4 wheels, yours is meant to be an Aston Martin is meant to be a powerful icon. My BMW is also an icon, but it's not an Aston Martin. So although we've got we've still got a car with 4 wheels each. It's got a body, it's got a bonnet, it's got an engine. And every business is like that. They've all got those elements, but of course they're different in the sense of what size they are, what scale they are, how many countries they're in, and so you can always find those elements of a business that are opportunity to improve. Let me put it that way. And the other thing I'd say about that is for me, drop me into $100 million business, Larry, I'll find a way to improve it. Always.
Yeah.
It's much easier to do that than it is to have a startup, to go from a startup. My goodness me. And I've learned that myself through COVID.
Yeah.
Trying to create a business, because, I transformed my own business at the start of COVID. My goodness me. It's way harder, I think, to go from nothing to your first million.
Yeah.
After that, it's about performance improvement. It's about motivation. It's about the processes. It's about the people. It's about the knowledge and skill. In those early stages, it is a whole host of things. But let's turn to one of the companies.
So let's talk about, you took them from 30 million
30 to 45 to 70, yeah,
and then to 70 over what period of time?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that, and let's talk about it from, what were the key elements to that? What were the blockages? What was the coaching that you did? Like, what was sort of different about that?
That was, these days I run an online audit, a best practice audit for sales organizations, international sales organizations, and that was kind of my learning ground for that. We went into this business. So they were in 23 countries, 6 regions around the world. We had 168 field sales guys and about 300 inside salespeople. And their business model was...
Whoa, wait a minute. 50 outside and 300...
168 outside.
Outside.
300 inside.
Wow.
Yeah. But in 23 countries, so obviously they were dispersed, and their business model. I mean, it's a really clever business model. But what they were doing, they were selling supply chain services. I mean, so they managed supply chains for huge global companies. Really, really interesting business, clever business. They'd been bought by an investor or investment group, and the investment group believed that this company should be 10 times its size. It should, the market was there for them to grow, and they were right, but they didn't quite know how to do it. And so, the first thing we did was we carried out an audit. And looking back, I laugh at it now because it may I'm go back 12 years. But the first thing we did, we had 5 people and me for 4 months doing an audit. Now you imagine 23 countries, 168 field, 300 internal. And all the infrastructure you've got in those different companies and countries, wow. and it was really detailed. What we did. We definitely boiled the ocean with that audit, but I discovered a huge amount about what makes business tick, and so out of that we were then able to understand where the strengths were, where the weaknesses are. And one of the most common things, and they were no different, one of the most common things in international businesses of whatever size, I mean, I don't deal with your sort of mega $1 billion plus businesses, not at that size, but I'm sort of mid-cap businesses. One of the most common things is that businesses grow, and they grow into, well, that's the way we've always done it, phrase, yeah? We do it like that. Well, yeah, but that's the way we've always done it. And so what happens is you get what my dear friend and now deceased friend and mentor in business strategy used to call sub-optimization in a business. So your left hand wouldn't know what the right hand was doing. So you'd have one country that, like in that particular business, I remember they had the German guys were absolutely brilliant at account management, well structured, well ordered. They managed their accounts really well. They weren't growing particularly fast, but they were rock solid business. They need to learn how to scale their business up, which is another part, the second part of what we did. And then but then at the other end of the world, you had people in Chile and Argentina who were superstars, rock stars, in finding and acquiring new customers. So their customer acquisition business was brilliant. Here the problem was left hand didn't know what the right hand was, so they weren't sharing that best practice. So they weren't They weren't working in cohesion together. They were just looking at the results of each business independently. It's like a federation of businesses. I've told you about other companies I've worked in. I mean, they're not unique in that at all. Because I've seen that many times. So the first thing was this audit that we did was it was thorough. It was in depth. We then understood what we needed to do. We presented back to the business where we thought the best bang for the buck was, how we bring about performance. And what we decided to do was we created a global best practice coaching program. So we designed this coaching program. It was every aspect of sales you can think about, from customer acquisition through to the pipeline management, through to account management and advocacy and so on. So it was the whole gambit that we did. And I spent a lot of time, unfortunately, creating carbon and on an aeroplane somewhere in the world. And it was great fun because we were working I was working with different cultures. When we were in Chile and Argentina, I remember there were like 40 or 50 salespeople in this room, and in the as me, an Englishman, doing we'd already agreed we created a series of workshops on how to improve their performance. So they were very structured workshops. But in the corner of the room, there was somebody, two people sat in this little shed in the corner, translating. So we sat there with headphones on like this, and then as I was talking to the group and working with the group, somebody was translating, and they were hearing me
Wow.
it was absolutely brilliant. But then we doing the same thing in Germany, in France, in the UK, and so on. So what happened was for me was that I just got close to everybody in the whole business, around the world, and we the take up that especially and I should never forget these guys in Latin America. They were so keen. They were rock stars anyway. And we had this in another business we talked about once. They were rock stars anyway, but they wanted to be better. They were like the high performing athlete. They wanted to know what is it they could do to tweak that performance and make it. And the guys in Spain, I remember working with these guys in Spain where they had a challenge with their sales cycle, the length of their sales cycle. I think I told you about this, where they, on average, their sales cycle was 16 months. So the challenge that they had was how could they grow the performance of the business in 1 year if they had a 16-month sales cycle, and they didn't know the key elements or the KPIs inside that sales cycle. And so one of the things we did when we reduced by first of all understanding it in all countries, and then coaching the people. So this was coaching at a level, every aspect of sales you can think of, from nurturing through to lead qualification, through to discovery, through to conversion into demos or trials, through to creating proposals and delivering proposals and winning RFPs, and so every aspect of sales. For me, it's a fantastic experience, because I was to take everything I'd learned from you and other people through my career, and now I was able to turn it into something that would be applied in practice. And the result was, in 10 months, I think I've shown you my famous favorite slide of a pipeline funnel, where and you see all these changes in it, and it was just, and something, I'm always amazed myself when I see it.
Right.
Within 10 months we've reduced, or maybe within a year, we've taken the 16-month sales cycle down to 10 months,
which is huge, because that's going from like over a year. How do you project?
It's huge, yeah. So if you reduce like your formula, there's a formula about reducing. If you reduce the sales cycle by 25%. By 20%, you will automatically get an increase of 25% in your sales without doing anything. And if you think about the logic of it, you've got the sales curve, and what you're doing, you're pulling the sales curve forward. So one of the key things in a business is how can I reduce that sales cycle? And so that was one of the things. We within a year we grew 52%. So it's 30 million pound business. We grew 52% increase in signed orders across the business. And then every step in that sales process, every step, there was significant change, like 10, 15, 20, 27% changes at each area. But it was by this whole best practice program of me going around the world and training or coaching these people in the different countries, and then sharing. We'd hold conferences between them, both virtual and real, so they'd actually talk to each other and share what was working, and the results were amazing. And it went on from there. Yeah. So the outcome of that for me as a consultant in the end was the investors. This is a funny story here. So funny for me. The investors asked me, they say, "Wow, that was amazing. How did you do that? What did you do?" Because and at the time I couldn't have told you how I did it really. I mean, I was just designing this best practice program and delivering it and getting everybody involved and having a great time. And so they said to me, "So well, can you design?" The auditing phase that we did in 4 months, 5 people, 4 months, that's an awful lot of money and time. Can you do it in a way which we, the investor, could use as part of our due diligence in sales? So I thought, well, that's a great idea. I wonder if I can do that. Larry, let me tell you, I tried and tried, and I had spreadsheets coming out my ears. I couldn't figure out how to do it. For me, at the time, it was just so complex. There were so many different variables in the performance I saw. But of course, what I was doing, I was swimming in the ocean, wasn't I? I was deep in all that minutiae, and I couldn't figure it out at all. And then some years later, a friend of mine, we were talking about this, and I said, just bugged me like crazy that I couldn't do it. And we talked about it, and he said, "Oh, have you come across something called the capability maturity matrix?" I said, "I haven't got a clue. What's that then?" So we started talking about it, and it's used in the software development world, and it's basically saying you go from an ad hoc level of performance through to superstar mode. I mean, I'm simplifying,
Right.
and there are 5 key steps on that process. So, and that was a light bulb for me. So all of a sudden, I could now take the key drivers of sales performance, whether it's in management, in sales knowledge or skill, or whether it's the channel that they're working in, or all those different elements, and determine what good looked like. So that was my start. What does good look like? What in my experience and what does good look like? And then all those steps. So we ended up with a best practice audit with about 240 scenarios, business sales scenarios. So then when I would talk, and then we automated it. Now it's online. So when we're now describing or asking a sales team, how are they performing against these different criteria, they can look at a scenario and say, well, yeah, it's like that. It's not a no. I'm not saying, well, you have a guess between 1 and 5 or 1 and 10. It's not that at all. It's saying, in these scenarios, where do you think you fit? So you get a very clear idea of where that business is.
So let's pull out for a second to more of a helicopter view of coaching. And when you go in and you do this coaching, we had talked about, you're able to identify what the problems are, put a playbook book together of how to figure out what their bottlenecks, their choke points, their areas where maybe there's leakage or missed opportunity, right? A lot of times you talk about missed opportunity. And talk to us about, if I'm a business leader and I'm engaging a coach, what am I looking for? What's like a good coach look like? What can I do to help my coach?
Yeah.
And what do I want it to not do to hinder the coach? So
great question.
Just from
great
the
questions.
really, broad picture.
Yeah.
What are those things?
So let's start. So you great questions, Larry. So the 3 aspects that you said. One is, how do I decide how do I find the right kind of coach for my organization? First point, if I heard you correctly. How do I help that coach achieve what they want to achieve, and how do I not hinder?
What are those things that are that are going to
So let's start with let's just explore this together. So let's start with how do I find the right kind of coach? It's a bit like, how do I find, if I'm going to find a rockstar salesperson, if I want the right salesperson, I'm going to define what I want in the first place, aren't I? Before I meet anyone. So I'm going to write, a job description. I'm going to write, or role specifications, I call it. So the same thing with a coach. What do I want this coach to do? Yeah. So I have to know. Before that, I have to know, what broadly, what are the challenges in my business? Is it, what is it that's happening in my sales organization that I need fixing? And if the answer is I don't know what needs fixing, then that also provides you a clue to what kind of person you're going to bring in. So you have to find people that you have to define what you want in the first place. Then you're going to look for coaches that have been there, seen it, and done it. The key is that they understand understand what it takes to make, if I want to help Drew, we both love Drew. We think he's an absolute super.
Drew Karen, my cousin.
I talk about Drew everywhere I go in the world. I'm always mention Drew because he's for me he's the top of the A frame in every way.
Undoubtedly.
If I wanted to go and help Drew, I need to, like a coach, I need to make sure that I will never be better than Drew at all. But I need to understand what he does, what he's trying to do in order to help him improve his game. So when I'm looking for a coach, I need to understand what kind of people I've got. Are they rookie salespeople? So that's a level of coaching, or have I got guys that are at the other end that are more like Drew? They're rockstar leaders, and that will determine what sort of people I'm going to look for. And then when I'm, and this is important. So when I'm interviewing people, coaches for the role, I want them to come and talk to me about not just what they've done, but what can they do for my business. So when I interview salespeople, or actually any kind of leader, they have to come along and demonstrate in the interview process. I give them a scenario, and they have to come and demonstrate to me what have they done. How can they help my business? Right. And so that selection process is absolutely critical.
So let's talk about that. And then the other thing is you were talking about identifying what those key bottlenecks are. If you're a business leader and you want to unlock the potential of your business, like unlock, as Gary Pica says, unlock the greatness that's inside of you. What I find is if you ask the questions, people are pretty honest with you. Like, we're good at this. We're good at oftentimes I hear, once we get the appointment, we're great. We're just terrible at getting the appointments. Well, that's a problem. Well, we've got a problem where people only buy on price. If those kinds of words are coming out of your mouth, then that could be a problem. And is it the transition from sales over into the ops team? That could be a problem, and all of these things. So I think often you write down those bottlenecks that you think that you hear either from your sales reps, because your sales reps will tell you, like, I'm terrible at following up on leads, or I'm really good at in front of the customer, but then when it comes to the paperwork after the deal, I'm not good at that. So you can almost I think if you listen, you can get your sales team to tell you.
But here's your challenge, Larry, on that. When you go into an organization, and depending on how the second to your points is, how can the management help you as a coach? One of the challenges you get with the sales guys in bigger organizations anyway is they're afraid to tell you the truth in the beginning because they don't know. Hang on, are you in here for management? Are you here to spy on me? Are you here to, put my job at risk and jeopardy? And so part of the game, or the not game, that's the wrong word. Part of the work as a coach is to engender trust with the people you're working with, and to protect that trust at all costs, even if it means that you are standing in front of the sales team against their management, or so that you're supporting the sales team because they need to trust you. Otherwise they're not going to listen to you. If they trust you, it's like kids in the classroom. 30, 40 years ago, when I was doing it, If they trust you, they'll learn. If they think that you care for them, and it's the same thing. So if they think you care for them, your sales guys, and they genuinely you want to help them and genuinely coach them and drive them, they will move heaven and earth for you. But that takes effort and trust to reach that point.
And that's the whole thing. This is a combined effort. I don't think under any conditions you can hire a coach and just sign off and say, okay, they're going to take it. You need the buy-in from management, all the business leaders, whether that's sales managers, VP of sales, marketing, even up to the president or CEO. And we were, just before the podcast, we were talking to a consultant who's consulting an IT company.
Yep.
And the initial evaluation was, she said, let me talk to your sales team. So she talks to the sales team, does an evaluation, comes back, and she says, because this gentleman who had this successful technology company hired these sales reps and was basically getting nothing. Like, what's the problem? He didn't understand what the problem was. So he hired this coach or consultant to come in, and she did an evaluation, and she came back and she said, you have to fire every one of them, every single one of them. You need to get rid of them. And, that's a tough pill to swallow, but that's sometimes, it's, you might not have the right people in place, or you might have a couple of people that are just negative. Like what happens, I always say, what happens in the lunchroom really impacts you. Because if you're explaining your vision, this is where we're going to go. We're going to do this. We're going to change that. We're going to start to market this, or we're changing our pricing schedules or whatever. And then they're in the lunchroom and they're saying that's never going to work. They don't know what they're talking about, blah, 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 blah. That's all working against you. But sometimes it does take that. When we rolled out our PRM software, and we, in there they can see when the salesperson last logged in. And sometimes they're like, well, Johnny, the sales rep says the leads are no good. And we're like, well, do me a favor, log in. Okay, go to Johnny's account. When's the last time Johnny logged in? Oh, 6 months ago. Yeah. Oh, I had a feeling about Johnny. And sometimes you don't have the right team if you don't have the right team. So sometimes it's right in front of your face. Like the person knew, like, I'm not getting any sales. Why aren't I getting any sales? And of course, the salespeople are good at selling to somebody, especially to somebody who's not expert at salespeople, at managing salespeople, or understands salespeople. Like he's probably a technology guy. But it was funny. She knew you literally need to rebuild because these guys are wasting your money. They're taking advantage of you.
But going into staying back with your 3 points, I'll tell you a funny story about the sales guys in a minute and the sales leader. So the sales guys need to trust you. They need to believe that you can help them. So they need to understand your credentials. So that's why these days I will put somebody who I think is, a rockstar sales trainer in to work with the sales team to train them on a particular sales skill. I can do it, but it's not my world anymore.
Right.
So my world is the investor, the C-suite, and maybe the sales leaders.
Gotcha.
And then other people can do the rest bit. So the guys need, the people in the sales need to believe that you've been there, you've done it. You can, they can see that you've got credentials. Your management need to help you by the example we're talking. This company in 23 countries. That was a great example of that. So we'd gone in on behalf of the investors in the first place to do the audit. We'd identified with the management, with everybody else, where the shortfalls were, where the opportunities were, what were the blockers, and so on. And then it was the whole business, the management from the top down, the C-suite in the organization, the managers in the organization, and everybody was involved in this best practice program. Everybody. at all levels. And so we had the buy-in from, you know, the guys out in the street, the sales guys could see that wasn't that their management was sitting there saying, we're going to make you do this. It wasn't that at all. They all wanted to learn. As an organization, there was a culture in this organization. They wanted to be better than anybody else on this earth. And so the management in that business helped that whole process. The reverse of that is when you get, so one of the challenges I think I've said to you, when I've worked with teams before, certainly with sales teams, in the beginning, it can feel for them, in the beginning, first few months, they think I'm a hero. They think I'm some kind of superstar, and it's the honeymoon period, and they think, oh, this is really interesting, it's really good. Yeah, we'll tell you everything. And then after 3 or 4 months or so, they think, hang on a minute, this is getting a bit, it's getting a bit exposed here, because what's happening, we're starting to measure performance. Now, it's not meant in a negative way, right. but what it's doing is just opening the book to saying what's right, what's good, what's not so good, and so on, and everybody can see it. And so what happened to me many times is after 3, 4, 5 months, sales guys start complaining to their manager, oh, we don't like this guy Parry, he's, right. We don't like him at all because he doesn't know what he's talking about anyway. And if you've got a weak management, at that point, they'll support the sales guys, and
right.
then you're up against it.
Listen, beware. Salespeople may not be great at selling your product, but they're awesome at selling you. That's how they got the job in the first place.
Right.
I always say that the worst sales reps have the most experience interviewing and are the best interviewers. The best sales reps never do it, and they're horrible interviewers. Yeah. But the worst sales reps have to be excellent, the best interviewers, because otherwise they don't eat.
So when I'm in that scenario, Larry, so what I'll always say to the management of the business, and I'll say, let me tell you, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have a honeymoon period when everything is wonderful and it's new and it's shiny new thing, and all of a sudden the people start to feel uncomfortable because it's now putting them in they're now measuring performance, and then you'll start to get some complaints about the people that is usually the weakest people, but they'll start to complain, and you have to stick your ground, because I absolutely guarantee if you stick the ground, 10, 12 months in, those same salespeople will think that we're absolute superheroes, because now what's happening in life is easier, it's more structured, more repeatable. They're earning more money,
higher closing
they're
ratio,
achieving
higher
more,
average
they've got
deal,
higher conversion rate, all that kind of stuff,
higher retention,
and then they think, oh wow, how did this happen? We weren't doing this before.
Right.
And so simplistic, those are the three things. I got to tell you this funny story because it's on my brain.
Go ahead.
Before I forget it. So I told you I came from the world of school teaching and pharmaceuticals marketing.
Right. When you say pharmaceuticals marketing, you were not a drug dealer, just to clarify.
Well,
I know
actually,
Jeff had a question about
I'll put up a disclaimer.
Disclaimer.
Yeah.
When Dave refers to himself as a marketer of pharmaceuticals, he was not a drug dealer.
We were actually. We were.
Oh, well. But not illegal drugs. Let's put that down.
We were selling the contraceptive pill.
Oh, good on you. Good on you.
Yeah, in those days, and a very famous cough medicine, which I won't mention. But anyway, so I'd gone from that world, which was anyway. We can talk about pharmaceutical marketing.
It's a funny story.
So then I joined this this motor finance group, and then I became a managing director, the CEO of this manufacturing company. Now, I knew diddly squat about sales because I come from marketing and school teaching. I didn't know what sales was, and so, but I had to employ salespeople. Now, because of this business, because we catered out commercial vehicles, we had demo vehicles with the tow bars and the bumper bars and God knows what else in it, and our sales guys had these vehicles. They had demo vehicles.
Had to have them.
So I had to. I hired this one I knew nothing about hiring salespeople either. So I hired this sales guy, in my naivety, gave him a vehicle, and he was in the Midlands in the UK, and he knew where he had to go and who to call and so on. So I'm kind of like a month in, still very happy. Yeah, he's telling me all the things he's doing and all the people he's saying. So 3 months in, I'm sitting there thinking, hang on a minute. there's something wrong here. There's no sales from it. I'm getting his expense receipts. I'm
Right.
paying his
That's
mileage,
all. Right.
Yeah,
Like clockwork.
he must be going somewhere because he's certainly sending
Got to
his
be doing
petrol
something.
spend. Yeah.
He's on the ball.
So
It's on the
so
case.
about 3 months in, I'm thinking, nah, it doesn't feel right. My intuition was giving me, and I started.
Your
I decided
spidey senses were activated.
I was going to start phoning people, and I did, and I started phoning the people that he's supposed to have seen. Of course, idiot me. That people were saying,
Who?
What? What sales guy? No. Anyway, long story short, it was my bathing in fire in how to manage, how not to manage salespeople. Because you know what he was doing, Larry? He was running a parcel courier business without a demo vehicle.
Oh my
Incredible.
God! We've had situations like that, especially with the remote sales reps, where we had sales reps that were selling consulting services on our paperwork, so it actually had our name on it, making us liable. But all kinds of crazy stories. I don't feel like you can just like here's the plan, sales guys. Go ahead. Expecting to see results. But it does take, if you go down the coaching route, which I highly recommend, because there's always the opportunity that's in your company to grow instantaneously from leakage, from blockage, from just not a perfected process. I mean, order of magnitude, in the best case scenario, you're probably, when I say best case, that means you're doing as much as you can to optimize your sales organization. You could easily, through these methodologies, get 50%, 75%. I mean, you're talking about 100%, 200, 300, 400%. But if you think you have a really well-oiled sales machine, I highly recommend looking into the coaching part. Also, I know you don't like consulting, but because my experience has been with the companies that I've worked with, there's always things that I can instantly see just because I've been doing it so long, and I'd be like, I know what's going on with that rep, just by a short conversation. You can tell. And the rock stars always present themselves in the same way. First, their numbers don't lie. They got crazy numbers. And then it's going to boil back into their activity. They've got twice the sales because they've got twice the activity.
But you need to understand, Larry, when you're coaching people, you need to understand their strengths, their weaknesses, their limitations, and their potential. The key is what's the potential. So when I go in to do a best practice audit on a company,
right?
Of course, you do the analysis of the historic sales and what their performance is like and how they got to where they are. That's a given. But finance people can do that. When I'm working with investors, they've got people that crawl all over a business to do all of that. The key is what's the potential for growth in those people, in their organization, and where are the weaknesses in that? Because if you understand, so when I go in, the first 3 months is that. That's it. Well, the first 3 months is doing that, is understanding what the potential is. The first week is doing the audit, but after that it's just understanding and working with the people to understand what the potential for growth is. Because if you know that, then you know which buttons to press in order to get the greatest return in the shortest possible period of time. And that whilst you're now buying yourself enough time to go behind it and start backfilling all the other areas that you can grow. I mean, when COVID hit for me, it was a shocker because I spent my life on an airplane somewhere in the world coaching people. That's what I did, or coaching companies or changing companies. And that's why I know about starting startup businesses, because I think, for me, I thought, what on earth am I going to do now? So I thought, well, how can I take the knowledge and the skill that I've learned from companies in a way that now becomes repeatable? So it isn't just David Parry going in and doing change management programs for companies. And so I created all the stuff that I do. I thought about every single what I did in this 23 country business, all the things that we learned through that. And so, okay, so if I was going in face to face with people, what would I do? What would I talk to them about? How would I bring about change? And what I did, I spent the first year of COVID taking that and transforming into online coaching programs. So I've now got about 40 different coaching modules, if you like, that address all those key areas. Now, obviously, every company is different. Right. So if I'm doing it, I'm doing it. Related to specifically the company. But what I tried to create then was a repeatable version of me in those that other people can use.
Very cool.
So I'm really, but I know how difficult it is to go from nothing to build a business.
Yeah.
To now I'm fortunate because obviously I work with bigger companies and I get referred into these different organizations and but now I want to help other people do it. So help other people, other consultants that want to achieve, other coaches that want to achieve the same thing, and bring them in and show them how to do it.
And that's where where we're moving towards is connecting more with coaches to help our clients, because we can deliver the best leads, the best information, the best software on the planet. But if that process is broken, or if there's just one bottleneck in that sales process, then, and I've literally seen, $1 million opportunities where, this customer closes the deal and this other customer didn't even get an at bat. I think I talked to last time, one of our customers in Texas, came across as a hospital lead, which is difficult because you have to navigate through the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we have an entry point contact, but it takes, you have to go through that. But they did that. They looked at it instead of saying, oh, gosh, that's hard. We've only got one point of contact to stop. And so they did it. The first deal was $450,000.
Yeah.
And they said, that's nothing. There's another $4 million right behind this. And that we've already sort of pipelined, but that's nothing compared to the lifetime value. Now, 2-3 of that guy's competitors got the same piece of information, and no one else is calling and saying, gosh, great lead in that one. We just missed this opportunity. But
you picked on a, we'll talk about another time, not today, but the healthcare sector, from a sales point of view, is a pretty complex sector because there are so many moving parts. You talked about in hospitals. I've got a medical client that I worked with for three years or more.
And this is where coaching comes in. You hire somebody, as you said, you're moving away from on the low end to coaching, but highly, we were talking about it, and that's why we're actually talking to this coach now who does that. Will help with the messaging and help with sales evaluation. There's so many sales reps that shouldn't be selling. Yeah. So many. Or they're just not motivated in the right way. When you talked about unique ways that you have of evaluating sales reps even beforehand, like the simple thing, one of the things that you were sharing with me earlier was, when I get a candidate for sales, I say, you tell them, go to my website, look at what we do, and then prepare a 10-minute presentation. Sell me
6 slides.
6 slides, 10 minutes. Prepare that for me. And he's saying, some people come in and spend 20 minutes on the first slide. Next. But if somebody can do that, knows nothing about your company, can go to the website, they should be able to, if you're looking for a rock star, they're gonna self-identify in that exercise.
You just hit me on the other touch point.
I hope I didn't hit you.
You just
That's assault.
Lit the spark. Right?
So much sketchy situations here. Drug dealing,
assault, recovering, all kinds of stuff.
There's a it drives me crazy. People recruit salespeople, and indeed other roles, but they recruit people, and and I'm talking about big companies, the big HR. And we've done assessment days in some of the. We'll talk about that. Another software company, one of these days, I'm sure, where we're really good at recruiting people. But many companies I see, even quite big companies, their recruitment process leaves a lot to be desired. So you'll end up with they'll do, you go to recruiters, and all recruiters aren't bad, but most of them are. And so they'll send you shed loads of CVs of people that actually don't have no resemblance
They're just
at
going
all
to throw
a
bunch of spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks.
Exactly. Anyway, so you get past that stage, but and then so you really got to define what it is I'm looking for in this role, and you write a job description out. What we do, as well as doing that, we'll then specify on a program we've got what are the key elements that we need from this role and the individual.
Right.
We'll put weightings against every aspect of it. So when we're interviewing, the first thing we'll do is take them through a CV screen. And so before we met the individual, do a CV screen, and we'll just look at the CV and very quickly run down, is this person not? I mean, you get rid of a lot of CVs to begin with, but then we run through the list. We'll end up with the first level shortlist. Then we'll do what you said. Then we'll say, okay, so we'll invite you in to come and talk to us, and I call it the virtual handshake. It's like 20 minutes. It's half an hour. It's not a lot, but in that they have to come along. Like you say, it's they can present in whatever form they like. But so I kind of tongue in cheek say it's 6 slides, but basically got 10 minutes, and in that 10 minutes they have to tell us about themselves, and then importantly, what they know about us and why they think they can help us as an organization. Now, if they can't do that, Larry, then they're not true salespeople. If they get past that, and that's just stage, that's the second stage in the recruitment process. What we then do is so then you're now down to maybe 2 candidates or 3 candidates for the job.
But let me stop you there. So that you're walking us down like this very specific process. Yeah. I don't want to go through the whole process here, but the point is that if you get the right coach, they're going to take you down this road and put that full process together for you, or there should be a process that you have, where most of our customers have no process in place.
Yeah, but the important thing, Larry, is if you don't go through that process, and you're rigorous about finding the right people, then what can then happen? You then in the next phase. So now you recruit somebody. You're then into the induction period. Now, if you've got, the worst scenario is you have an induction period, and the salesperson is say, "Well, go meet Larry. Go meet the CEO. He'll talk you through the company's vision for an hour, and then they'll come and talk to you, and then go meet Fred in production, and he'll tell you what we do in production, and so on." So they'll spend a week just going around the different departments and just listening and talking to people. Might even be a month or so that they're doing that, and at the end of which they say, right, go and sell. Go. I mean, I'm exaggerating slightly, but go out and sell. Now, at no point have you tested that person's knowledge or ability to deliver your company's mission, your company's vision, the way you sell. If you haven't got a playbook on how they approach, how they pick up the phone and make those first initial calls, do this. If you haven't got any of that, then how do you know when they're on the road that they're going to do the right thing for you? You don't.
Right. And they probably do the wrong thing.
And then you can end up with, sadly we've all been there at the end of their probation period, say, "I'm really sorry, you've got to go." Or worse than that is you get, I won't say which company, but there's one company that I was with where they'd recruited a sales manager in France, and in the is on paper, his CV we went through all that process. We had a good induction program, and but there was something not right with this guy. He wasn't working out. He wasn't he wasn't performing. The kind of things we expected in the first month and 2 months. So the manager then said to the senior guy in the organization, "We've got to get rid of this bloke because he's not performing." No, he'll be fine. You carry on. He's not performing. No, you carry on. And so at the end of 3 months, which is the probation period, this is in France, where the employment laws are quite different from the US and quite different from the UK. You cannot easily fire people in France. And so at the end of 3 months, the manager was saying to the senior guy, he's got to go. No, he'll be fine. So this went on for 5 months. And at 5 months, the senior guy said, "Do you know what? You're right. There's no sales. Let's get rid of him." It cost them 260,000 euros to get rid of this guy because of the employment laws in France. So you got to be really meticulous about who you recruit and how you induct them to make sure that they hit the ground running as fast as they possibly can, but in the way, and I mean that opens up all kinds of doors about playbooks and so on. Yeah?
So that leads me to so there's a buddy of mine, extremely successful, 10 years, 0 to 115 million in sales from a dead startup. And, you know, I said to him, what's the biggest mistake that you've made? And he said, holding on to Johnny, the sales rep, for too long because Johnny's a good guy.
Yeah.
And I've repeated that and given him credit for that. A fellow by the name of Ryan Clark, who we'll have on here. And you literally can see in the audience this aha moment, like, yes, that was me. And I think and again, this coach today who's telling this person to fire those 5 sales reps, and I've heard the phrase "fire fast," because the rock stars identify themselves most of the time very quickly. Like they come out of the chute and start breaking all the records. They follow the game plan.
Yeah.
They trust, your vision, because you don't want somebody that's like battling with you unless heck, if they post like crazy results right out of the chute, then let them go. But if they're not, and they're not following your playbook, well, then you just lost control of your business. So,
but even if they are the rock stars, and I told you this story about it because this has recently happened to me, where there was a whole team of salespeople. I went in to help the company. I went in there to help accelerate growth for this business, and but when I got there, what I discovered, apart from the fact that there was 0 sales, I mean there were people in situ that had been there for a year with no sales and no pipeline. But apart from that, what I discovered was that they were actively subverting the founder of the business and the founder's vision of the business. So, apart from the fact that they were not delivering any results, but they were working completely against
the negative.
The vision of this company.
I
had to say, I mean, I knew the people, I certainly knew the sales leader of this business, and I said, you can't do that. That's not, you won't. Apart from the fact that it's suicidal for your own role in the business, you can't do that because you're going to kill the company.
Yeah.
And no, that anyway, they carried on, and in the end, we had to get rid of them. And the whole sales team went.
Very difficult thing to do. Where I've had to do that a couple of times. Sit down with people and say, look, you got to stop doing this, and it's not an easy thing to do, but you got to cut that cancer out.
One bad apple, Larry, and
it
can
affects
just ruin everything.
Everyone. So you really got to keep your. And, the other sales folks are reluctant to come to you. And then, again, this is the kind of thing that, a coach, they might tell the coach things. Like we have sales reps tell us stuff.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, and we're just,
I had it in one sales team, a big sales team, where the sales manager had recruited his girlfriend.
Oh. Yeah. That sounds
into the sales team.
That sounds that sounds like a winning formula.
And then promoted her to be the manager of all the other sales guys.
As one does, no resentment there.
No, you can imagine what was going on in that team, and those guys absolutely hated it.
You're not at that point. You're not running a business. It's basically an Italian opera that's going on there.
But it took a coach to come in and say to the business, "Hang on, guys,
what the hell are you doing?
This is a problem.
Yeah,
fix it."
Yeah,
but the management
sounds like a great idea.
The management knew they knew what was happening, but
somebody sold them as a good salesperson.
But they were afraid because the sales leader was a rock star sales guy.
Right.
But what was happening? You had one rock star sales guy and the whole rest of the sales team who was totally demotivated, not performing as they could.
Yeah.
Because of this one crazy relationship that was going on. Got to be, if was it somebody, the American guy that I worked for when I first, he said, if you're going to play away from home.
Yeah.
That was his expression.
So, Yeah, and you'd be surprised. I was interviewing a sales rep, and I said, "So how long did you work at the last company?" He's like, "I worked there 3 years." And I said, "Where did you rank? In terms of stack ranking your sales with the rest of the team?" He said, "Well, there were 10 sales reps. I was probably number 10 out of 10." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Well, why do you think that was?" Lack of performance. This is an interview. I find like if you ask people obvious questions, sometimes they'll tell you the answer. It's just.
Do you know what, Larry? There's a great interview technique that I learned from a young entrepreneur that I know, and because we were interviewing salespeople, and so when you're interviewing, you prepare. Now we're in the face-to-face bit, so past all those early stages, and you prepare your questions and that you're gonna ask this individual. And then if you're uncertain for something, salespeople lie in an interview. They'll brag up their performance, and of course,
and the worst,
you and me can look at it and say, "Hang on a minute, wait a minute, you had that how much growth on that one? So what was your sales target?" All of a sudden you realize that the numbers don't add up.
Right.
But and then what this guy taught me to do, he said, "I'll always hold one question back till the interview's over, and then when the Columbo character, he does
just one more question.
Columbo. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you finish the interview,
right?
And they sort of put all their things away and they get up, and they're ready to walk out the door, and they're all smiling and say, "Oh, just one question." That. Of course, because they dropped their guard,
right?
Then they are totally flustered because they can't give the that's incredible. What a way to interview!
That's
brilliant.
That's
brilliant.
Money right there. That's great. Just hold off on one question.
Cruel, but
wait, before you go.
Yeah, I love it. I just need the Columbo coat.
Exactly. The trench coat. Yeah. No, but these, it's it's stunning to me that we'll talk to business leaders and they're like, "Yeah, I know we need to, but I can't get my sales team to do this, or I can't get my sales team to do that, or they won't do this, or they won't do that." And it doesn't have to be that way. You need, and I think that's where coaching comes in, and I think maybe that's where they can be supportive in terms of like, you got to believe in sales, you got to believe in, that the last podcast that we did, we talked about the human element, how much it's a very the psychology of managing salespeople, because I think it's one of the few jobs that you can do absolutely nothing, and it's very hard to detect.
Yeah,
it's very easy for them to fool you. They can always. We've literally seen that.
Not in my world, Larry, but I understand.
No, but we've literally seen where people put fibs into their into the CRM, or they're lying about, and they'll lie. So I think it's one of the few jobs that you can literally do nothing. Versus if you're in accounting, you're like, "Hey, I want that income statement. I want that balance sheet." Boom, balance sheet's on the desk.
But you know what, Larry? That's why we did a whiteboard here, because I would draw this for you. I have this curve that I talk about in sales. There's the activity curve.
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody joins a company, and I'm sure you've seen this, somebody joins a company, and in the first weeks or months or whatever, their activity level is sky high, because they want usually anyway, because they want to impress, they want to demonstrate that they can do the good job. And what happens, depending on the length of your sales cycle, somewhere down the road, months, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, however long your sales cycle is, guess what? The results start to happen because of the activity that's gone in before. Yeah,
right.
Black and white. And so, but equally, what happens over time with some salespeople is when you get to the point where the results start happening, and they start getting all the accolades because getting the results, and everybody said, "Wow, what a fantastic sales guy you are! You're doing what? And they're thinking, well, this is great, so I'll play golf on Friday. Nobody will notice, yeah?
Don't make the cold calls,
and so what will happen is the activity curve will start to decline.
Right.
And as that activity declines, you're right, in that there's a time period before anybody realizes it. And all of a sudden, that performance curve later on, depending on the sales cycle, will also start to fall. And then you've got two things will happen. Either the salesperson themselves realize what's happened and they leave the company before they get kicked out.
Right.
Or they get under so much pressure because the sales are declining, but they can't ramp up the activity enough because the sales cycle is too long.
Yeah.
And so what I focus on is always on the activity, always.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you know what activity it takes and when it takes, it's your formula, the activity level and the conversion ratio and the average order value.
Which, by the way, everyone, there's a video on YouTube and Spotify that goes over the sales formula. If you haven't checked that out, definitely check it out. It's pretty simple, but man,
it's brilliantly simple.
It changed my life.
Yeah, it's brilliantly simple.
Yeah.
But if you focus on, first of all, in my world, obviously understanding what those elements are, but then if you focus on the activity that the person, it's the quantity of they got to get out of bed in the morning, haven't they? They got to get out of bed and make some phone calls or go and visit the customers. So it's the volume of they got to do something. It's got to be the quality of the activity. So have they got the right knowledge and the right skill to be doing what you expect of them? It's got to be at the right time. It's wherein if they understand the customer journey, where is that customer in the journey? So the sales got to do that, and then it's got to be in the right direction. So they need to be talking to the right customer. So I've been out with sales guys. I should never get in one company where I'm the new sales manager, and I've got 100 salespeople, and I'm being taken up by this apparent rock star in the east of England, in the UK, early in the morning, and we go to visit this customer at his home, 8 o'clock in the morning, and we have an hour, Larry, and we had a great conversation about the weekend, about the football, about the cricket, about the weather, and whatever we talked about. Nice cup of coffee and some croissant or whatever we had for breakfast. And then we leave an hour later, and the sales guy said to me, "So that was a great call, wasn't it?" I said, "Oh, really? What? Why were we there? What did we achieve?" "Well, he's my best customer." I said, "Well, is he?" I said, "Why were we there?" I thought we were going to try to sell something. And what? So the sales guy had no idea what I was talking about. So what he was doing was because he'd told somebody over many years before, they were his best friend. He knew them well. But they weren't people who were going to bring us business tomorrow. They weren't, So his activity was in the wrong direction. It was in the wrong place.
Right.
He shouldn't have been doing that at that point in time. So one of the things you can look at, and you've heard of the Boston Matrix, yeah, the sort of square thing where you say you have your the likelihood of sale on one axis and the scale of the opportunity, and you plot out your opportunities on this matrix. And there's guys in the top right corner that you want, the ones you can close the fastest, but got the biggest deal. They're the ones you want. So when you're looking at your who do I go to see? Where's my activity best placed in order to get the result? That's part of this whole process of change in a sales organization, is for them to understand where they're going to get the best bang for their buck. Not who's their best mate, but who are the customers they can work with at whatever stage they are in their customer journey to close the deal fastest.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, the optimal frame of mind, the optimal attitude, because let's talk about the attitude, frame of mind from the C-suite, right? So you're brought in to be the consultant. Just talk in general, nothing very specific, but just in general, what does that look like if you can visualize a customer that just helped you through the process versus hinder you?
You mean in terms of selling to the C-suite, or
no, in terms of you've already been brought in as a consultant? Because I know you've talked about somewhere midway through, you don't have buy-in from the C-suite anymore, and it just makes your job that much more difficult. But what are those attitudes that they have? Nothing's not the specifics, but what are the attitudes like?
I think the key thing is that they're supportive. So I can think of well, first of all, that they understand what you're going to do as the consultant or coach in the business. So you've already been through all that. What do we need to do? Where are the key areas? And so they bought into the plan at the beginning anyway. But then they have to have the you need the support and the staying power of that C-suite, because it's never an easy ride. There's always going to be some bumpy bits along the way.
You talked about arguments. You're going to get into arguments with,
of course you are.
Everyone in the process.
Yeah. I told you about the business, the Pan-European business, which was one of my most favoured accounts in terms of its performance. But and I can stand back and say to you, "Wow, look at that hockey stick, Larry. This went from 60 million to 125 million. Oh, wow, that's pretty good, isn't it?" And then I told you, when I look writing my memoirs and I look at the detail of what actually went on in that business day by day, and
resistance you get from all levels,
and the arguments that we were having about what we should do or not do, and but of course that's just a normal part of business life. It's a normal part of daily life.
It is normal, and you should expect that. And maybe some of the stuff is going to rub you the wrong way, but I think if you get a good coach, you have to be supportive. You have to understand,
of course,
that there's changes that need to be taken place, and that we were talking about the sales team or management looking at this as a threat. We're going to come and try to sabotage you, but
if they and the C-suite share the same vision, share the same support, that I've had I'm a passionate believer in what's known as servant leadership. So where you have people who are I can probably mention 3 or 4 in my lifetime that have been the most amazing people that I'd worked for any time. Where they've had not pussycats at all, so hard business leaders. They're not not softies, but they care about their business. They care about their customers. They care about their staff, and they're supportive of that. And they are, so there's in one company there's I'll mention his name, a guy called Kevin Gaskell, who I think is the most astonishing individual in many ways, both personally and in his. He's the guy that walked to the South Pole twice, and he's like not much younger than me. So he's got that level of determination. He's very, very a successful man, but he's also a man that never ever lost his temper. That I heard him. Maybe he does, but not in the time I worked with him. He's also the person that would talk very quietly. If there were a problem, he'd sit and he'd listen to what the issues were. And he'd talk it through with the people, and so he'd bring people around. He'd help. So if there was a challenge in getting people to do things, he'd help me as a coach, as a consultant. He'd help me bring that team of people around, and that for me is what you need from your C-suite guys. They need to believe in what you're trying to do. They'll stick to it because they're persistent in what they want from their business. Obviously, if you don't deliver, then they'll take a different view. But they're supportive of what you're doing.
And you got to be tough. You have to have the empathy for the sales team, but
you got to take the hard decisions. Of course,
you got to make hard decisions, but you also have to be tough, and you have to have this pig-headed determination to make that change take place. Here's the plan. Sales reps are going to fight you tooth and nail. It ain't easy. But tough doesn't mean bullying. Right. No.
So I've been in businesses, Larry, where the senior guys have been absolute bullies in their and I obviously can't mention those businesses where they've been really unpleasant characters. You don't need to be a bully.
Right.
What you need to be is very firm and very clear about what you want and
Yep.
passionate about what you want. I mean, I work with a client now who's, my goodness me, this CEO is gifted in every way, in every which way I can think of. The CEO is a detailed kind of soul. So this person, I won't say male or female, this person knows what they want from the company, and they know what good looks like. And so their expectations are quite high of people. But you know what, Larry, that there's not so all of this person is quite demanding. I think is the right demanding of everybody in the organization. It's not because and it's not in an aggressive way. It's not in a bad way. It's simply in a way of, let's try and make this business the best possible business on this world. And this person has, has a global vision for sure. And so you can make tough decisions, but you don't have to be a bully. I mean, I've been in the bully world for 7 years of my life, and it's not a pleasant place to be.
You don't have to.
No, but in those days, I'm going back a bit into the pre-2000, where they would frighten people into doing what they needed them to do. I mean, it's really, really bad. I mean, I'm sure it exists today, but I mean, I won't work with businesses like that anymore at all. I've had one client, I think I told you I had one client that was, within 3 weeks I realized that's what was going on, and I just walked in and said, I can't work with you, and I walked away.
Right.
Because I don't want, it's not necessary. It's not the way to grow a business. It's not the way to get the amazing exponential growth performance that you get out of an organization. That doesn't work. It's short term, it's short lived, and you just ruin people's lives. It doesn't have to be like that.
Right.
And for me, I proved it 14 or 15 times in the last 20 years, because they're not businesses like that at all. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So I think that, the coaching from the standpoint of giving you a different perspective and highlighting the maybe areas that you're have blinders on, but also, like I said earlier, there's some things where that there's a bottleneck. Yeah. Like if these words come out of your mouth, I can't get my sales reps to do this, or they won't do that. Well, as soon as those words come out, you need some help for somebody to guide you through that process and also support them through that process. And you'd be surprised if every change that I've ever want to make in my company, I've never, ever, ever back down and said, oh, I can't get them to do this. I can't do that. Or I can't make this happen. Never.
But you can coach them. But you can coach them to do it. And there's,
yes.
You know what? One of the most now, Larry, for me, coming at this end of my career, they're one of the most joyful things that I have. And I'm not often at the coal face these days, but sometimes I am. And one of the most joyful things for me is when you're coaching some person, younger than me, of course, but you're coaching them, and the light bulb goes off in their mind, in their world, and they achieve something, and you can see the joy in there. And then for me, wow, that is so rewarding.
Every single time.
Cannot believe.
Yep.
It's incredible.
And all the changes that we make, we try to put it in a position where the sales reps can make more money, where they're more successful. And, but they've got it in their brain that you're just dreaming up these ideas just to make their life miserable and make them make less money. But I will say that when we do need to make change in a person or in a process or with a manager, I've had hour-long conversations with other managers in the company about how we were going to approach somebody. If it was a key person or there was a key roadblock, hours to just discuss, like, how should we do it? Should we say this? Should we say that? Just to sort of, how do we be empathetic? How do we be stern? For it, what could amount to like a 10-minute conversation. And if you do that, and because it's a friend of mine says that, he gets paid to smash big rocks into little rocks and then deal with those little rocks, right? So because sometimes it's a matter of turning one sales rep to get to initiate the change. And I've never felt like it was a waste of time. And if you get that change started, that catalyst, that first person, and take the time to figure out, okay, how do I approach them? What do I say? How does this sound? No, that doesn't sound good, Larry. No. And then you come up with this, beautiful little way to communicate this in a way that, you're wrapping your arms around the person, but you're also letting them know, I'm not budging on this.
And sometimes you just got to do it. Sometimes, so one of the things I learned in the past, 20 odd years with acquisitions in particular, is when you're looking to acquire a business. We had the discussion, 30 years ago in one business where we were acquiring a company, and the debate was this. So if I'm going to acquire a company, I'll do my due diligence, and I know what I want to do with this organization. When do I make change in that company? Do I make change on, immediately?
Oh,
so I say, right, this is what we're going to do,
Yeah.
Or do I let that business roll for 6 months, 12 months? In every acquisition, there's a pit of about 6 or 12 months anyway.
Right.
Because there's lots of navel gazing, people not sure whether they got a job, not got a job, all that kind of stuff. And in the end, what we decided after failing and doing it several times is, you decide what you want to do beforehand. You might be wrong, so you've got to be flexible about it. But you decide what you want to do beforehand, and then act swiftly. Mm-hmm. Because it's painful in the beginning.
Rip the Band-Aid off.
But yeah, exactly. Rip the Band-Aid off. It might be painful at that moment in time, but you've then got more time to grow the business. If you allow it to fester. So you take over a company,
right?
And you say, "Oh, don't worry, guys, nothing's going to happen." It's nonsense. It's not true.
Right.
And what happens is then people go into a fear mode for 12 months. They're not really sure, when is this going to happen?
The monster is always
when is the axe going to fall?
Worse in their head than the actuality.
Right. Yeah. So it's far better to take that decision, decide what you're going to do, and do it, and then deal with the but in a humane way. So
right,
I mean,
of course.
So definitely act swiftly and don't prevaricate.
Yeah, and and especially from the C-suite. It's a matter of that vision. I talk about, when we made the change to, introducing the PRM to our product line.
Sure.
So much resistance from the sales team. And it was one of the greatest things that we've ever done. It just really took off. It brought 2 of our competitors to their knees. I wound up acquiring those 2 competitors for pennies on the dollar. And it's the amount I spent a year while we were developing the software, pitching this to the constantly expressing the vision to operations, to sales, to accounting, sitting down with everyone in the organization and explaining the vision of why this was important. Like we're selling, sales leads to people. It's like selling who hate their CRM. And they're like, I hate the CRM. I use an Excel spreadsheet, or I've got it on,
It's in my little black book.
I've got it on my black book, or I've got it on cards, and I'm not going to use that thing. And so I realized, we're selling bullets to people who hate their gun.
Yeah. Mind you, that there are moments. And I can think of one. I definitely won't mention the company. One glorified situation where acting swiftly was extremely painful, and it was the wrong thing to do. Where this company had acquired a big company that acquired a reasonably large company. We're talking over $100 million and complex business. And the acquiring company decided that overnight, when they bought the business, on the day they bought the business, the software that was being used for managing customers and pricing and really complex subscription services, they were going to change it to their software overnight. Guess what? It didn't work.
Whoops.
Yeah, and they lost millions of dollars.
Whoops.
Within 6 months. They lost customers. I shouldn't laugh, but I mean, it was a classic of how not
that's
how
like
not
a Harvard
to do
case
it.
study. When I was in school, we'd have these Harvard case studies of these.
Well, and you know what?
Whoa.
Unfortunately for me, I was the guy that had to. I was the intermediary in between the two. So I was
yummy.
I was the person,
good on you.
I was the person that had to
so you
oversee.
stayed behind.
I had to stay behind.
The mess.
I had to stay behind.
God.
Exactly. Yeah. So I had to move and stay.
Got perfectly good software. This is great.
What?
You're kidding?
Listen,
What?
They
Wait,
were great people.
Oh.
They were great people. They just made a wrong decision.
Yeah.
That's all it was. But my goodness me.
Oh, boy.
Was it a costly decision?
Whoops.
Huge. Yeah. Yeah, big oops.
Oh, my God. Well, listen, this has been great.
It has, yeah.
It's been great.
Always a pleasure, Larry. Oh, I really always enjoy
Thanks again.
our chats, yeah.
So why don't you tell the folks how they can get in touch with you? Why don't you just give like a really brief description of where you are now with the, I know you don't like to call it consultancy with your coaching, but it really is consulting.
It is.
But he just doesn't want to call it consulting.
It is consulting. I just want somebody to invent a new name for it.
Okay, well,
we'll
figure
come
it
up
out
with something. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, like, what size companies and what?
Okay, so the kind of companies where I've had the greatest impact on them they've been companies in the, I guess, $10 million up to about, 10 million to 50, 60 million, like the one in Panyo. 10 to 60 million, those sort of mid-cap businesses. They've grown to a level, but there's a kind of glass ceiling that they've got to try and break through.
Yeah.
And, and what I've seen in business, that there's a break point at $500,000. There's a break point at $1 million. The next break point is $5 million.
Yeah.
Then it's 10, and then it's 15, and then it's 30. And so, and it's it's in those areas that is the where I can make the biggest change, and it's because they've got they've got some established practices over years. They've done well as a business. They just need that they need the engine tuning up. They need some parts sorting out in order to get that next level of expansion, of breakthrough growth and transformation. And that's proved for me that's definitely proved to be successful.
There's a lot.
Whether it's technology business, Larry, but but then I look at the clients. I've had they've mostly been tech related businesses, software, hardware, managed SaaS businesses, a medical client that I've had. Probably 4 or 5 of them have been software companies for sure. But yeah, it's in that world. But I'm trying to think of things I wouldn't work with. I wouldn't work with companies that I've done nothing about. I know.
Right.
I don't know anything about agriculture, for example. So, I don't think I'd work in that world.
So you folks out there that sell seed.
Yeah. Exactly. No, I got a pal of mine who's really successful business in selling agri-chemicals that they do. Huge business, but I'd be lost in that world. It's just not my.
And the thing is, from having our discussions and knowing you over the years, like that's where you live in terms of your coaching and your consultancy. Sure. But all of the stuff that you're talking about applies for $500,000 companies, $1 million companies, $5 million companies, $10 million companies.
It does.
It really does apply. Maybe the level of detail is not as intense because it's a simpler business, but everything that you talk about,
But the reason, Larry, why I don't work in that space, so it's not because they don't have a need. Of course, whether it's $500,000 business, $1 million business, of course their needs are the same.
Right.
The difference is at that level of growth, they're usually their entrepreneurial business. So it is the entrepreneur, founder, leader, whoever they are driving it's their business, it's their baby.
Right.
And so if I come along and say, actually, your baby's not is not being laying in bed the right way, they're going to get a bit upset with me. Yeah. So it's difficult. And so the business for me, where I work, is it has to have gone beyond that stage. Yeah. So they're businesses where it might still have the founder, the founder CEO of the company or the founder chairman or whatever they are in the company. They might still be that, but they'll have grown to a level where they've become an organization where there's multiple layers, and that's why I absolutely love working with multinational companies, because I know that's where they will have the kind of challenges that I've experienced. Yeah.
And now, how can people reach you? What's your website?
So they can get me from the website. I have a consulting website.
Whoops.
Dare I say, consulting website, which is Smart BRG. So, and the BRG is my son came up with the name, is the Business Recovery and Growth. So it's Smart Business Recovery and Growth. SmartBRG.com. You can find me on that. You'll find me. You find me on LinkedIn, on David Parry, or indeed in Smart BRG, or you can call my cell phone. I'd love to help anyone. So you can call me on 44 UK 779 225 116. That's 3 1s. The treble is 3 1s and 6. So yeah, but genuinely, Larry, if somebody wants to reach out, even if they want to share, half an hour of my time just for me, just to talk through they can't figure out, the sales guys are not, telling me they can't do this, that, or the other. And sometimes it just takes a short conversation. You do the same thing. Short conversation.
All the time.
Have you looked at it this way? Just, final thing for me then, Larry, before we close off, I'd like to say to companies that when I go in, I'm like a man from Mars for 3 weeks. Yeah. Or maybe a bit longer. So in those 3 weeks, I'm sure we've all done it. You go into a business and you see things that no one else sees. Immediately, you can see it. And the reason no one else can see it is because after a while, they've become ingrained in the business, and it's not. And so they're buried in the day-to-day minutia. And then, you've done it with employees. You have new employees. They come in, they say, well, why are you doing it that way? That doesn't make sense. And that's actually what happens to me a lot, is you just from the helicopter view, so right, wow, that's interesting. Let's dig a little deeper and find out what the problem is there.
Yep.
Great to talk to you.
Great to talk
As
to you.
Always.
Thank you so much.
Might I say, we'll put David Parry's information on the screen or in the description, and then if anyone has any questions for him, put that in the description or comments.
Absolutely.
So we'll know for next podcast for him to answer any questions that were concerns that we have.
Yes, that's a really good point, producer Jeff. So this is part of a series where we're going to do sort of a deep dive into different topics and, kind of focused around different success stories that you've had. This is the third in this series. It's probably going to be 10 or 12, so it'll be every month. But yes, we do encourage you to, if there's specific questions that you'd like David to answer next time he comes back, let us know, and we can address those things.
Absolutely.
And check this out. Instead of consulting, you're a sales mechanic.
There you go.
Well, I don't even use the word sales, producer Jeff. So here's the thing. It's of course, my focus has been at the front end of a business. It still is. But if if a business is not performing, if a business is, for whatever reason, not performing, it isn't just the sales. It's not just the sales engine.
It's the process.
It's the whole, and you have to be able to see all aspects of the business. Now, you might, my skill set, of course, is at the front end. I learned in my conglomerate days how to make businesses grow. But actually, over the years, because of what I do, and I'm working with my best friend in every business I work with is a finance director every time. Yeah. Because they are the people for me. They can tell me what the numbers are, so we have to have a symbiotic relationship, and so it's so I haven't quite figured out the role, Mr. Jeff, but sales is part of it. So I think for now we just have to stick with the consultant bit. Yeah.
Thanks, David Parry.
Yeah.
I'm Larry Dillon.
Thanks, Larry.
And thank you.
Thank you.